Well, welcome to Webgains Transform 2020. We're here to talk about consumer trends, which is obviously a huge topic. But I know, we've all been sort of, things have been changing at a massive rate of knots, and I'm looking forward to kind of hearing from all of you on this. So I won't go into too much detail yet. But I know I was reading a report the other day. Mintel wrote on the 8th of January about 6 consumer trends to watch, and noted some things like the rise of mobile device use and the drive for retailers to make better experience for people in store, because people weren't going to want to go in store so much, and all these things. And actually they couldn't have predicted what was in store for us all in the coming months, but it does go to show that COVID has merely served as an accelerator. But I know Richie and I have spoken about the kind of COVID time machine before, and we've I've had discussions with all of you at some stage or another about how things are speeding up. But I'm proud to have with me today an illustrious panel to explore what will be driving customer behaviour and retailer strategy into the future. Kate Ancketill is the CEO and founder of GDR Creative Intelligence. Some of you might have already heard Kate speak to Webgains' own CEO, Richard Dennis, about the future of retail. If you missed it, I highly recommend you go back and watch it after this debate. Kate's the innovation partner to around 30 of the world's largest consumer brands. And what she doesn't know about the future of retail and consumer trends probably isn't worth knowing right now. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow, but right now. Elliot Myers is the founder and lead consultant at the Affiliate Marketing Advisor, author of the Advertiser's Guide to Affiliate Marketing, and the former head of affiliate at Gymshark. So welcome to you, Elliot. And Richie, I've had the pleasure to work with Richie over the past few years. He's an entrepreneur, visionary, and an all-round good guy, constantly looking to the future and currently growing a great business in Vvast, an outsourced e-commerce model, transforming the direct-to-consumer space. So looking to hear more about that, Richie, and your experience with brands. And last but not least, Rich Phillip, the marketing director of Stance, on a mission to transform the way that we think about socks. Not just making great product there, Rich, but building a brilliant brand and creating a movement. I know you've worked on many well-known brands before, Rich, but this one is truly groundbreaking. And I know you make good product because I picked up a pair of your lovely socks when I was in the office with Richie. So welcome all of you. So over to the panel. Let's start with you, Kate. So what, in your mind, what does the future retail, leisure, entertainment market look like? Can you paint a picture for us, please?
Yes, it's not all bad news. I am quite personally optimistic, but there is no question that there will be shrinkage from what we currently have. I think we all know that. KPMG think there's going to be 25% fewer retail stores in the next 2 to 3 years. And they think that we're going to have 50% of all sales will be online by 2025. So the implications of that, if that's correct, are that we will have shrinking high streets. But what will be left, I personally think, will be better and will be more fit for purpose for the current and future consumer needs. So that's more obviously experiential. I know we hear that word a lot, but let's face it, if it's not fun, I mean, think about how much fun it is to go to a Lego store if you've got young kids and you've got the party room. I mean, that's to die for. That's never going to go away. We're never going to see the back of the great stores like the Harrods and the Selfridges, the big flagships, the Nikes. They are actually doubling down and investing in those hugely experiential spaces. However, there is the rest. So the tertiary high streets will go. They'll become residential, community education, etc., all needed. And you'll see a consolidation into smaller high streets. We don't need as much retail. Retail is one thing, hospitality is another. Hotels right now, obviously having to sweat their assets. Many of them are becoming WeWork type spaces. You can rent a room by the day to work in, or you can rent a room for a private restaurant meal, for a socially spaced kind of party gathering. And I think that we'll see in the longer term future for leisure and hospitality, much better integration with local communities and more engagement with providing curated culture. So it really is about culture, commerce and community. Going forward, there'll be much more culture. Gaming hotels, culinary skills hotels, hotels where you work on the ecology of the local environment, much more specificity and provision of something beyond just the nice comfy bed and the nice design of the interior and so on.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, that's fascinating. Lots to chew on there. Some brilliant kind of new phrases that I've not heard of before. But that whole concept, I think, of experience is absolutely, you know, at the fore of all our minds. I think when we think about, you know, developing our brands right now. Elliot, how do you see this sort of translating into the affiliate world? You know, moving the kind of in-store to the online. You know, what do you see as the opportunity for us in the performance space, and how do we grow the industry to meet those, you know, consumer but also the kind of retailer needs?
I think certainly one area I'll comment on first is impact on affiliates. I think that we're already seeing a shifting in terms of understanding of what a typical affiliate is with the rise of influencers. But I think more so, you know, platforms such as TikTok, Instagram releasing their own real version. This ability to engage and cultivate your own communities. You know, if you look at a brand like Gymshark, it's where they're quite smart, and where they've been quite successful is in cultivating this community feel. I think for brands, you know, if you look at the online space now, it's very easy to launch an e-com store, and there are, you know, loads of Boohoo-esque type brands, to the extent where they're actually buying brands that are similar to them. They've been in a shopping spree since COVID started. So it's all about, on the brand perspective, it'll always be about trying to get customer loyalty, but to the extent that is like the customer's part of your football team. So that customer, you know, is really bought into you and what you're doing. And I think that on the e-com side of it, it's not just enough now just to have a storefront and sell products. It's about how can you keep customers engaged in your ecosystem. So you'll likely see retailers start to do the sort of things that Apple or Android are trying to do, where they try and get you on Pay, they try and get you on Maps, they try and get you on their email. It's all about really trying to maximize that share of wallet, but also we're seeing brands start to do things which arguably they wouldn't normally do. So, for example, retailers offering loyalty platforms, etc., and trying to influence how people go to restaurants and buy food. So, you know, it's definitely, you know, I agree with Kate, it's definitely about fun and shifting to being about more of an experience. I think on the affiliate side of things, you know, there could be some real competition for your classic cashback sites. What if a TikTok influencer can do the same thing and offer an assortment of codes to shop at various retailers, but they do it in a fun and engaging way? They've got daily access to that community. We may see a disruption with the whole go to a search engine first to start a retail journey, or to start to see any shiftings in the voucher code. Certainly from the clients I've been working with, there's been a massive focus on just terms of performance marketing and the marketing mix, supplementing classic bottom funnel affiliates, PPC efforts with trying to win editorial exposure, trying to work with bloggers, trying to work with influencers. But also I think there's a sort of balance here. While it is a great time for influencers and whatnot, another thing to be aware of is the cost and how expensive that is. And then definitely emerging SME brands can't afford to pay £5,000 per post and whatnot. So you know, what we've been trying to do is actually negotiate all that on trying to get brands to be able to get on a commission or a sample basis. So I still think it's early days, and how everything works hasn't quite been sussed. There's definitely not an established way or means of doing things or working with influencers. But again, going back to Kate's point, it's exactly that. It's all about ultimately for the consumer, how can brands, how can publishers, how can the whole marketing experience actually become more fun, more engaging, more experiential? And I think there's definitely going to be a bigger focus on the after sale element, where we're trying to get customers to become fans and get them back into other parts of the ecosystem. So brands starting to do a lot more things, invest in new technologies and ways to approach and influence how shoppers behave and interact with different things, not just their core offering.
Yeah, thank you, Elliot. I think lots again there to sort of think about, and great to have some real life examples of how brands are trying to engage. Rich, I know, sorry, Richie, rather, I'm going to go to you first, but you and I were discussing only last week, that, you know, we talked about the COVID time machine, you know, the phrase that you coined, but with the number of brands you work with, what has been the shift that you've seen in the past sort of 6 months? And we've got some great themes that have come through there from Kate and from Elliot around kind of experience and fun, but what else are you sort of seeing in the market?
I think with because we're sort of firmly focused with our brands on the whole sort of direct to consumer phenomenon. So a lot of the brands we work with will have established themselves in market through more traditional channels like bricks and mortar retail, you know, via the wholesale channel, for example. What we've seen the last 6 months is a big focus on like never before really, to really make sure that direct to consumer channel is optimized and really working for the brands in the context of their lifeline, which is bricks and mortar retail, being completely switched off. And I think one of the things that's led to is the availability of stock for direct to consumers being really, really helpful as well, because I think with you know, sometimes with brands it's not always optimized for you know, sometimes it might not be optimized for the e-commerce offer straight away. So we've had access to stock that we never would have been able to before, which then leads to a situation where you can massively overachieve, which is really exciting. And I think for us, we're seeing almost Q4 type performance at the moment. I'm sure you guys have probably seen similar, where the kind of galactic numbers, sort of triple-digit year-on-year growth across all our brands, which is a direct symptom of the fact that these customers obviously have access to the e-commerce channel. They probably have more disposable income because of the situation with furlough, especially in UK, and it's just led to this incredible sort of situation where e-commerce has been going through the roof. I think the big question going forward is whether it's going to last. And I think looking at the ONS data, the last couple of months, there's been a small reduction in e-commerce channel adoption, but that's probably more a reflection of the fact that some people are choosing to go back to the supermarket more than anything else. I think a lot of these sort of customer habits where they've transacted with the brand potentially for the first time via D2C or e-commerce, they're now on a lot of these brands' databases, and so long as those brands segment effectively, there's a good chance they retain them. And I think that habit is then going to be sort of fixed then going forward. But yeah, to your point, Kate, as well, I think these are absolutely complementary channels, and I think as we go forward, there's almost been this kind of natural clearing of the decks that almost was needed on the high street to kind of make sure these brands punch through, make the experience much more experiential. But then they can have this whole experience where they can buy products in person, but obviously then repeat online or vice versa. I think that's going to be very much the future.
Yeah, I agree. So joining up that kind of in-store and online, and brands having to get a lot smarter, and truly not just say they're going to put the customer at the heart, but really put the customer at the heart of everything that they're doing, and build that loyalty from the ground up. Rich, I know that's something that you're really, really passionate about. I know you've been working with Richie and his team for a long time, but from a retailer perspective, what are you doing to kind of gear up for the future and to put the customer at the heart? You know, what's the role of sort of technology in that? What can we look forward to kind of in terms of immersive experience from start?
I mean, retail for us is really double-sided. We have, like Richie touched on, the wholesale market. We've got 3,500 third-party retailers out in the market, plus our own brand stores that we have. And really, with COVID, we're really kind of excited about the opportunity that I think will present itself over the coming months around really opening the door to high street retail. I mean, the footfall is demonstrably down. Our estates teams and landlords out there are really yet to open up the doors to slightly smaller brands. They are starting to kind of entertain rent-free periods, short lease terms that now make the high street, I guess, accessible for D2C brands, and to kind of play into what everyone's been talking about previous to me around that experience. It may be that some of these D2C brands start to use the high street as experience zones. We're certainly looking to use technology so we can be sort of more human and connected with our community, using more sort of personalized, dynamic technology that allow us to really connect quite closely, and probably be more in tune and empathetic with our audience and our customers' needs. And what we're looking at is how we can use technology to tie everything together. And an example of this, something that we're looking at, is the app Hero. I don't know if anyone's come across it, but it essentially utilizes your shop floor sales team as online personal shopping assistants. So really looking at when your quiet times in store. I mean, you know, I don't need to say it, but obviously footfall especially in the high street and central London, central city centres, is down an unbelievable amount. So is it that we could use the time between 9 and 12, 9 and 1 as experience zones where our shop staff team could maybe curate collections with customers online? They can go through and purchase online, but it's utilizing those guys in store who really are the eyes and the ears of the brand. They're the guys that really connect the dots and work with the customers, see the customers, and really help them experience the brand. And that's kind of what we're looking at, is how we can utilize these brand zones that we have, these immersive places. You know, there's been quite a lot of potentially lazy retailing over the last 10 years. And one thing we've been really trying to do is create experiences in store, bring our brand values into store, bring our art, bring our sport, bring our artists. You know, we had Daniel Ricciardo doing signings in store. How do we bring these places to life a little bit and make customers feel like they own a part of it and they're part of that brand's growth? Like we're not scared to say we're a new brand to the market and we're growing it with you, because I think Kate mentioned earlier, it's all about community for us. It's I mean, that word has been really overly used perhaps. But, you know, I think one thing that's come out of COVID-19 is that need to be together, that need to engage with one another, especially in the fashion industry that's so led by connectivity and connection with one another. And it's how do we kind of celebrate that? And it feels like we're potentially going to go really hyper local around retail. You know, is it the out of city zones that really expand? Is it your Pools? Is it in the UK? Is it your Brightons rather than your Londons? In France, is it your Lyons that are really going to explode? And what the retail environment is in those cities is going to be very different to what it is now, which is essentially go in store and buy products. It's go in store, create your collection, have a private shopping experience, maybe click and collect, which has been flying for a few years now. But it's all about, again, that experience and that opportunity, I think, on the high street, which is for me key.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, again, loads of great kind of, you know, themes to kind of pick up on there. I wish we had longer to talk to you all. But I love that piece about the in-store sort of signings, because there is something about that, you know, that kind of fan engagement, what happens in sports, that you're now starting to see translating across into kind of high street brand, and not just high street, but online brand. But it's that real sense of, you know, where does the stoke come from? Where does that feeling of, you know, like true engagement, of really feeling part of something, a movement, you know, that feeling of like rooting for your football team and stood on the terrace and all of that, you know, being part of something is so vital to us, that tribalism, I think. Kate, what are the big trends to come? You know, it's fascinating. You and I sort of spoke previously about that kind of concept of shop attainment. Shop attainment is another word that I never thought would come out of my mouth. And I know you've had an eye on China for a long time now, but what is in store for us as consumers?
Yeah, we actually do think, you know, the future's here. It's just in China. You know, they're way ahead of the rest of the world in terms of retail. And what they've really cracked is in most of the rest of the world, retail tends to be either seamless, quick, easy, you know, straightforward, like an Amazon Go type of thing, or it's immersive and culturally engaging and fun and effectively slow retail. And what they've cracked is putting those two things together, which is super rare in the West. And so, say, for example, you've got 7 Fun, which is one of the JD.com supermarkets. They have lots of segmented different ones for different kinds of local requirements. So absolutely supporting what Rich is saying about hyper-localism. But what they get up to in those little supermarkets, because they're relatively small, they're not hypermarkets. You know, they're a normal supermarket. You can buy your milk and your bread, but there's also 12 restaurants, 3 bars, constant kind of overlapping events every night. There's live music, there's sommeliers, there's cooking classes. I mean, this is kind of where things have been going in the West, but that would not be combined with, oh, absolutely anything you scan in that store could be at home delivered within half an hour, whether it's cooked food or raw food, or whether you're watching a cooking class on Facebook Live, which is obviously free to the brands. And then, while you're watching it through the live stream, you're ordering the food, either cooked, that meal, or the raw food, to also be delivered to you within the hour. So stores are becoming, at their best, and they already are this in China, they are physical and digital spaces that you almost wear as you walk into them. And that's because obviously they have extreme integration with certain apps that you use app for absolutely everything, and you pay by face, and there are privacy issues which I totally agree would not be appropriate for the West. And so we have to take the best of what they've got, which is absolutely localized inventory. They know what the people in each local neighborhood are searching for online. They know what they're buying, they know what they're looking at on apps, and they make sure that that store, whether it's fashion or food or whatever, is appropriate for that city or that town. And I think that's also an interesting point that Rich made, that although we are seeing temporarily, I hope, a serious decline in footfall for city centres, I think, let's hear it for the fact that we're seeing an increased engagement in regional town centres. And that's not a bad thing, don't forget, because I think we'll see a massive increase, not just in China, but everywhere around the world, in small independents, because what they have is that connection to the community. They have it naturally, they have it in space. So I think we'll see a lot of shifts which would be painful. But if we can take the best of what's happening all over the world, then actually what will remain will be much better for the community and for the consumer.
Yeah, it's funny, I asked you a question about China, and for some reason you took me back to a square in the middle of the south of France, like, back to the football and that feeling of, being an expat and being there with food and little boutique shops opened up all around you, and, having some food with some friends, and that feeling actually of shopping being much more an experience of, much more kind of a kind of family and kind of much more experiential, word that again I've never have thought of 10 years ago, but it's that warmth, it's that feeling of warmth and personality and people that are so fundamental, aren't they, to brand. Elliot, are you seeing these trends and the affiliate market transforming to meet them, from your experience working in the industry and certainly from your time at Gymshark?
Yeah, so industry-wide, certainly. I think Gymshark were, as a brand, are actually the forefront of what Kate's talking about. It's one of the reasons why they have temporary pop-up stores and didn't commit to brick and mortar. And the purpose behind the pop-up store wasn't a commercial. They weren't commercial goals per se. It was about actually keeping the customer in sort of arm's sort of reach of the brand. So naturally, as we were aware that as the brand expanded and became larger, it would be harder. You can sort of lose contact with the customer. So that's what that experience was with the pop-up store. I know that actually large mall owners such as Into were interested in actually dedicating space for brands to do these sorts of experiences, especially D2C brands. And as we do see that shifting away, sort of the traditional high street changing, and I do agree with Kate, I do believe that those personal, the one-to-one relationships, the more boutique retailers who have been beaten up by large chains and large rents over the past few years should start to have a renaissance, I feel, because it will be that someone may now decide, rather than go to the supermarket for to get everything, they may prefer to get bread from a baker. It could go that far, because if you look at D2C, there's all sorts of specializations. There are brands that specialize in all sorts of things, socks, traditional things, suitcases, all sorts of things. And that could, I feel that could easily translate onto the high street in some regard. Just across the affiliate itself, yeah, certainly. I think that there are a lot more specialized publishers rising up. And I think also the fact that you have this rise of influencers and that anybody can be an influencer now. So you could have somebody that is good at, say, for example, upholstering furniture, They can create content for people that are interested in watching furniture being upholstered, and they can then decide to launch their own furniture range, maybe on Etsy. Maybe they can start to sell some of that upholstered vouchers on Etsy. So yeah, certainly, yeah, I'm in agreement with Kate on that, and seeing some of these trends certainly right now.
Great, thank you, Elliot. And you know, it's interesting. We're sort of talking about, you know, all these kind of experiences and that kind of personal touch, but Richie, you know, what does the technology landscape look like, you know, for the retailers of the future? I know you know, there's a lot of work that you and the team have done to kind of, you know, automate as much of the process as possible. You know, what can we look for in the future?
I think the ongoing sort of requirement to make any interaction with the brand as seamless and as frictionless as possible is imperative. I think what we've always got to remember from a brand point of view is that what we're up against is Amazon, basically, the marketplaces of this world. So that frictionless one click, the suggestion engine Amazon has got as well, that is a ferocious sort of competitor, but at the same time, obviously brands are selling through Amazon at the same time. I think one thing about COVID, which has been really sort of compelling, is I think a lot of consumers will have interacted with brands for the first time and seen the benefits of doing that, like as in transacted with those brands for the first time, as opposed to just buying it on Amazon or buying a competitor on Amazon. So I think from a kind of tech point of view, the real kind of race now is to make sure that what you're offering as a brand is as good, if not better, than what the marketplaces can offer. Like offer that convenience. That's the crucial thing. And I think from a the sort of good example of that, sort of say DPD with their app, the fact that you can obviously track when it's arriving, change when it's being delivered, all those kind of things is actually something that Amazon don't offer. So that's a genuine value add. Likewise, from sort of kind of technology point of view as well, just the ability to be able to make that sort of delivery piece really personalised is really, really important. But I love Rich's point about extending the customer service piece as well, making it as knowledgeable. When you're selling a technical product or a product that might cost a little bit more than the rest of the market, it's so important to be able to translate those brand values. I love Stance because they actually call their customer service team Keeping People Stoked. That is the actual name of the team. It's amazing. So KPS, bringing that out on the website, on the live chat, on how they talk about their product, all of those things does not exist in the commoditized world of marketplace. Doesn't exist in the commoditized world of supermarket. This is a massive opportunity for direct consumer to exist in e-commerce, in bricks and mortar, and that's the really key piece. And that's all facilitated via the kind of whole technology side of things. And the final bit on that is obviously building out your single customer view. Is obviously that touted thing from the 90s we all talk about. The single customer view is so important in terms of joining up those sort of channel behaviors and making sure that the consumer really sort of feels like they're getting value, the reason why they want to interact with that brand.
Yeah, that's so important. You're absolutely right. I remember sort of having those conversations back in the 90s about, you know, data is king and all of that. And actually we collect all this data, but we don't not many brands are actually doing much with the data. Part of that is because, you know, the CEO of the big brands don't necessarily want to be head down in the data. They want to go and do the TV commercial out in South Africa. But you know, I think more and more, you know, people are realizing that the data is really important to automate as much as we possibly can to make that seamless, frictionless experience, so that you can add the value, you can develop out the customer experience, and you know, and create the stoke. I love that. Rich, tell us a bit more about that. What's your vision for Stance, and what's, you know, as a pioneer brand, you know, what are your hopes and your fears and the ways that you're doing things? You know, what are you doing differently?
I mean, we're praying and hoping that the high street comes back in some form or another. I think I don't know, probably the best way to say it, we're being pretty bullish but cautious at the same time. You know, we know that the impact of COVID is really a long-term impact and deeply disturbing to the original retail trade. But like I said earlier, like, you know, that's changed. We're all social animals, especially our customers within Stance. You know, I hate the word tribe, but, you know, customers that find Stance, love Stance and buy into Stance, you know, it's not unusual to be stood in the corner of our retail store and see someone take 20 pairs of socks to the till. And it's because they find it and they find the brand and they kind of just buy into it. They replace their whole sock drawer. You go and ask them why they're doing it and they'll say, replacing a whole sock drawer, you know, 10 pairs of stance or 10 pairs of socks will last me a year. It's cheaper than a pair of sneakers. And it's my job to really ensure that we stay connected with that customer. And it's not that one-off purchase opportunity. We get the revenue in and we run off into the night. It's about making sure that they come back. We prioritize retention. We give them experiences. It could be in store, like we said earlier. One thing that I sort of thought when Kate was talking about the platform element of retail, you know, we couldn't have brought customers into our retail zones 5 years ago, 3 years ago, because there was no existence of Facebook Live, Instagram Stories, Reels, TikTok. None of these platforms existed. Whereas now we have these social hubs that we can really pull customers in from across the world and really experience the brand like never before. And I think for us, one of my other hopes really is to really figure out a way that we can help customers discover our brand. And it's not on a transactional basis. You know, there's the obvious transactional conversion, but more on an experiential side of things. Like, how do we actually give customers value? Or customers nowadays, they want value with values attached to them. And like, how do we attach those values? What are they? How do we celebrate our art, our culture, our sporting roots? And I think a lot of this lends itself to collaboration, and a lot of brands, both D2C and traditional brands, have been looking at how they can work with one another, support one another. It's a big part of our business at Stance, partnerships and collaborations. There's the commercial side, which is leveraging your audiences, each other's audiences. But there's also the human side. Like, it allows us to connect culturally with new audiences, but also connect with you know, cohorts that hadn't maybe come across the brand in the past. So I think that's kind of what I'm hoping for. Really, the big fear is that, you know, we don't have that ability to open retail back up to the level that we want. Retail for us, as I say, is very much a hands-on ability for us to really, really engage on a tangible level with a customer, one-on-one. And that's kind of what I'm slightly fearful of, is that it doesn't come back at the level that we want it to, because we are a really, really tight brand that really works closely with our customers. They give us feedback, they give us direction on what collaborations we want to do, and we genuinely listen to everything we say. We use our social as our polling system. And our stores really are the hub of this. So that's kind of what I'm sort of slightly fearful of, but excited at the same time, because like we said earlier, you know, there may be an opportunity in the future to look at pop-ups, like Elliot was explaining about. You know, there's pop-ups are now incredibly commercially viable. Retail used to be out there and we wouldn't make any money off retail. It was scary. Let's not even go there. Whereas now pop-ups make it financially viable from a revenue perspective, but also from a community brand driving perspective. So, you know, that could be the future for us.
That's really exciting. I think, you know, as you said before, Rich, you know, your customers are sociable animals. You know, we are sociable animals, and, you know, it would be much better if we were doing this discussion sort of face to face. We can do it remote, it's fine, we'll make it happen. But actually, I'd much rather be sat there looking into the whites of your eyes and having, you know, that kind of energy, that spark off that you get when you're face to face. I think that flexibility is key, you know, and that's where these initiatives like, you know, the pop-up stores and being creative is so important, and collaborating. I think, you know, creativity and collaboration are two key themes that have kind of come through the conversation today so far for me. I think, Kate, I'm gonna go to you for kind of one final shot, if that's okay. Just in terms of that kind of in-store, you know, online, you know, the trends that we're talking about here for the customer, for consumers, are they going to be driven by consumers, or are the brands like Stance, like Gymshark, are they going to be driving the change? Where's the change going to come from?
I think generally speaking, it comes from the consumer, and often, you know, except for the very cutting edge ones like Gymshark and Stance, brands are often behind the consumer, I think. So obviously consumers have adopted TikTok, as you know, and Instagram and all the rest of it, and eventually will catch up in stores and make them what they've already started to make them in China, which is both physical store and also endless aisle. So they can be smaller, so it doesn't have to be flagship, but they're now becoming broadcasting studios. So they would literally just have a space. Either, in fact, could be a dark store, so no customers ever need to come in, but optimized for lighting and camera angles and brilliant concierge assistance. So actually, this is potentially the emergence of a new industry where we don't have store assistants as a job that you do while you're waiting to do something else, but store assistants as influencers, as live streamers, as experts who broadcast to the world or to individual customers, as we've heard through the likes of the concierge app Hero. So I actually think that this is a huge potential boon for tiny little micro retail stores, as you say, pop-ups, dark stores potentially, stores that don't necessarily have to be on an expensive high street. I mean, let's hope rent and rates gets fixed. But if it doesn't, then we need to start sweating the assets of anything that's physical, because that's expensive, and change our perception of what does the human element provide and who are they talking to, and not just to the customer that's standing in front of them between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Let's talk to the whole world and sweat our assets.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I have to admit, I mean, I've learned so many new things about, so many new phrases since kind of engaging with you all today. There have been some brilliant kind of concepts. You've definitely kind of, sparked off lots of thoughts for me in terms of, what the future holds. I was expecting a slightly dystopian view, I have to be honest. I'm now starting to feel much more excited and energized about the future. I think I love that concept of it's not the future of the high street necessarily. Let's get creative about finding those physical spaces that other people might not have thought about, and and build it and they will come. That concept is really positive, and we've had some brilliant conversations. I think you opened, Kate, with a phrase around culture, commerce and community, which I love, and then Richie took that on and talked about that kind of creativity and collaboration. So much food for thought. Thank you all so much for your time and your insight today. I personally really enjoyed talking to you all. I hope you're all happy to engage kind of online after the talk with people. We're going to be on LinkedIn if people have got any questions. Then hopefully you'll be around to sort of pick up on some of those. But if not, I'm sure you'll be happy to kind of engage with people directly. And let's keep this conversation going. It's fascinating, and and I wish you all the very, very best. Thank you so much.